This podcast is part of the Gonna Geek Network. The opinions expressed may not reflect those of other podcasts or affiliates of this show or Gonna Geek. Check out other geeky podcasts at GonnaGeek.com. And get ready because geekiness commences in 3, 2, 1. So, how have your video game, or in general, how have your gaming abilities translated to parenthood? What practical applications have you been able to utilize?
I can change a mean diaper already. And I think that is a hand-eye coordination deal.
Okay.
I would also say that I have a tremendous amount of patience because of video games. And that translates really well to being a parent.
Okay, let's get started. Because
Wow, that's really... It just sounds great when you chew.
you don't like it when people eat with their mouth full, right?
I don't think that's the way that
But-
phrase. I don't think that's the way that phrase goes. And I think it's just mostly the fact that on at least 90% of these podcasts, you're eating when we start.
Right, but what I'm saying is, so when you were talking about parenting skills that gaming has given you, right? So, like, you have been gaming with me for many years, right? So,
Are you saying that I'm your father?
That's part of what I'm saying. Well, but you've had to put up with me eating for, like, years, right?
Yeah, no, that's really true.
And talking my mouth full. So, really, I am your father.
I don't really understand what you're trying to say.
That's because my mouth was full. You get it?
That wasn't even a joke.
When have we ever made a joke on this podcast, John?
That's actually a good point.
Hey, listener, this is episode 61 of Unqualified Gamers, where I, Cody, am unqualified to do anything, especially find a fill-in host, and John is unqualified to not be here again because he's here again.
Yeah, sure. I would... I mean, you can be a gamer dad, I think. I think that's a thing you can be.
Who can be a gamer
Anyone.
dad?
I think anyone can be a gamer dad. I think that's a thing you can be.
But how is that in any way relevant to my introduction to the podcast?
Because I was trying to figure out whether I would be more unqualified now that I am a dad.
I would go with... I really have no idea. So I was waiting until we actually officially started the episode I want to be the first person of our friends to, on a podcast over oral, A-U-R-A-L, to orally and not text-based
You're
tell
not pronouncing it right. It's orally.
Hourly.
Yeah, there you go.
Hourly, I want to congratulate the out of you for spawning a human being that is alive and it survived and it's doing well, right?
He's doing awesome. So I appreciate your congratulations to me. However, I can safely say now that I know where babies come from, I can safely say that the amount of work that I had to do to create this individual was pretty minimal.
Right.
Yeah. No, my job was pretty easy.
Well, you had to... And my next question was going to be, I hope your wife is doing well, because I know that apparently having a human being growing inside of you is not always super comfortable and easy all the time.
Yeah, and to make matters worse, she actually had to have a C-section because our son was 9 pounds 15 ounces, which for those keeping track is 1 ounce less than a 10-pound baby. Which is, and if you know nothing about babies, that is a huge f***ing baby.
That is large.
It is.
Well, do you know the average? Like, roughly?
6 to 8 pounds is average.
Oh, boy. Yeah, that's a bit of a difference there.
Yeah, and 10s are usually like special, not like special needs like that, but like they are a sight to behold. I mean, he was large, and the labor was its own special story.
Yeah, I heard it was a long one.
It was. I think I've heard of labors being longer. Like, so I'll just tell the story because it's a great story. Like we went in because we had been an imminent threat of giving birth for 5 weeks because she was.
My God.
Yeah, I know. Like she was slowly, as opposed to the way that first pregnancies normally work for women, where you're not having a baby one day and then the next day you are having the baby, and like you feel normal up until that day, right? That's like the way that not only your first pregnancy, like that's generally how first pregnancies work, but that's how normal pregnancies work. She had the feeling like she was going to have the baby, and her body was preparing to have the baby over the course of 5 weeks slowly. So like that includes all of like the crampy stuff, all the stuff that kind of makes women miserable when they're getting ready to give birth. She was having that all for a long time. So that was really fun. But
yeah, I bet.
all of the doctors said that Max, that's our little boy, Max was supposed to come, and like we were told he wouldn't make it past like 35 weeks. He did.
Oh.
He did, because 35 weeks was 6 weeks ago. So eventually it got to the point where all of the doctors were kind of chuckling about it that we saw, because it's like, hey, he's not here yet. And they just scheduled it.
You meant wouldn't make it inside for 35, like not like he was gonna die.
No.
Right?
That like he would stay inside, right? And I mean, babies born before 37 weeks, most of the time need a stay in the NICU, the NICU, which is the neonatal intensive care unit, because there are things that aren't developed enough for them to survive without help. Like their lungs aren't developed well enough yet. So we were anticipating actually that he was going to be here early and that we were going to have to stay in the hospital for a while. So we made it to 38 weeks, and your full term at 37. So anytime after 37 weeks, if you go into labor, they just let you go. And we were at 38, and the doctor knew she was miserable, and the doctor was just like, all right, you know what? How would you like to schedule an induction? And we were like, that sounds great. So we scheduled an induction. An induction is where they put you into labor with drugs. So there's drugs that they can give you that actually they simulate the hormones in your body that cause women to go into labor, and they just kind of give your body synthetic hormones that make you go into labor.
Now, what if I took those drugs?
You know, somebody asked me that, and I don't know, because they don't use them ever in men. Ever. Because this particular hormone is really only there for women in relation to pregnancy. So I think even as like a transgender person, if they were to get like a transgender person who went like post-op, right? I don't think they would ever be exposed to these hormones, because the hormones are specifically for the induction of labor and for milk production, which as a transgender person wouldn't be able to carry a child and need milk for anything. So I don't know. They would never give this to a man ever. I have no idea what it would do. You'd probably shit yourself. That's what I'm thinking. You'd shit yourself, because that's what happens with that's what happens with all drugs that you're not supposed to take, I think.
Really?
No, that's not true. I just made that up. But I'm a pharmacist, so you can trust me.
I was gonna say. I mean, if an 8-year-old took Viagra by accident,
he'd shit himself.
Okay. All right. I'm glad we cleared that up. Here on Unqualified Gamers, where all we talk about is video games, now you know about the birthing process, Viagra, and 8-year-olds. You're welcome, listener.
So they scheduled the induction, and we were supposed to have the induction on like last Friday, so about a week and a couple of days ago. And they were like, but you have to call that morning, because like if it's busy, you know, you're doing like an elective induction. And they didn't tell us this, but apparently our induction was elective, even though our doctor set it up for us.
Okay.
And so that doesn't necessarily mean that, I guess, you get to be induced that day. Like if they're busy, you get bumped, which nobody told us. So we are preparing the entire week for this. You know, it's like, and finally the day comes. We like didn't sleep at all on Thursday. I mean, we were ready and we were excited. So we get up on Friday and we call at 6 a.m. because that's when they request you call. And they're like, and we had an insane snowstorm up here. I don't know if you guys had an insane snowstorm 2 weekends ago, but we had a crazy snowstorm, 8 inches of snow over one night. It was crazy.
Oh, of course. You can't, like you said earlier in an earlier episode, you can't have the baby under any reasonable circumstances.
Exactly. So we called at 6 a.m. and they're like, "We need you to call back at 8." And we called back at 8, and then they said, "We need you to call back at 11." This went on for a little bit till eventually it was, "We need you to call back at 1." And when we called back at 1, they said, "We're gonna try to get you in. The latest we can do this is 3. We think we'll have a room for you, so we need you to call back at 3. If there's a room open, you can come in and get induced. If not, we have to bump you back until Sunday." Which I talk about this now as if it's no big deal, but that day it was like the most deflating thing you could possibly imagine because we had
Oh my God, yeah.
we were mentally prepared, like we were ready for a baby, right? So we call back at 3, and sure enough, they didn't have room for us. So they're like, "Well, we're just going to schedule it first thing Sunday," and so we're now now we're at a point where we have to wait an entire extra day. Everybody assumed that he was coming on Friday, so the entire rest of the day is spent in text messages and in phone calls, like explaining the situation. So
Me included. I didn't hear anything from you Friday or Saturday, and then Sunday rolls around, and you post on our little group. You're like, "Oh, she's going into labor. Keep me posted." And I'm like, "What the hell?" 2 days later.
Yeah, so that's what happened.
That explains that.
That explains that, right?
Right.
So we call at 6 a.m. and they get us in right away. So we go there at 6, and they don't actually give her any drugs right away because they think that she's so close to labor already that all they have to do is break her water. Because apparently, if this is like a common misconception, but labor doesn't start by a woman's water just breaking everywhere. Like apparently, that only happens like 15 to 20% of the time. Majority of the time, like it starts with the contractions first. So they break her water, and we wait around. They're like, "All right, we're gonna wait for a couple hours and see what happens." Nothing happens in like 4 or 5 hours. Like nothing progresses at all. And so they're like, "All right, we're gonna start the drugs." So they start the drugs, and yes, obviously that they do what they are intent to do, and they start labor. And at this point, it's like 11:30. So we waited for about 4 hours, I think, with nothing happening, and they started the drugs at 11:30. And she
PM?
labors, and AM. And
Okay.
you think, like, for those uninitiated into pregnancy, which was me, I knew absolutely nothing about this process. Like, laboring is not, like, pushing is a part of laboring, pushing the baby out is a part of laboring, but it is not the majority of laboring. The majority of laboring is you waiting. It is because the muscles in the body that are like preparing this baby to come out all work on their own. Like there's no conscious effort to any of this because there's this hormone surge in your body, and it just the woman's body just starts working, and it just starts slowly kind of preparing her to push, right? And this goes on for a long time. And when I say a long time, I mean that we were laboring without her pushing, laboring for about 13 hours of just
God.
waiting around and her body like preparing itself, right?
Was
So
she comfortable and relaxed during this time, or like how does it
at first
feel?
no, but then they gave her drugs. I think it might have been the most pain she's ever been in before.
Oh
that.
God, that sucks.
Yeah. So, but she got drugs, and then everything was great. And so, she labored for like 13 hours, and finally it was like, all right, it's time to push the baby out, right? And so it's like 12 midnight. It's more like 11:30 when she finally started the pushing process, because that's a process too, right? So the nurse comes in, and we start this process of pushing, and it looks like it's absolutely miserable. And let me tell you something. I can never compare my like experience as a man to what was happening there. But as a man who is normally like able to do something to like alleviate a situation when there's a problem or something, or at least help to fix something if there's a problem, like you can literally do nothing at this point in the birthing process. You just sit there, and if it's somebody that you care about deeply, like I do with my wife, it is one of the most miserable things you can ever see. Because it is just like, it is the person that you love the most just sitting there, just in like this constant horrible pain, and you cannot do anything. You literally can't do anything. So it was that for 3.5 hours. This is a long time for pushing, by the way. Women do not normally have to push this long to get a baby out. It's that for 3.5 hours we're sitting there. And finally, the nurse was like, we're going to take a break. Like, we're going to take a half an hour break. We'll come back and we'll start pushing again. And Casey was like, I can't do this. Like, I'm not making any progress. I'm not feeling the things that they say I'm supposed to be feeling. It's just not working. We need to call the doctor down. So we called the doctor that was on call that was going to deliver us. Because what happens is you just sit there and push with the nurses until the baby's in a specific position. And then they call in the doctor for the last, 10 minutes. And then the doctor kind of takes care of the baby when it comes out and everything, too. But the doctor's not there for a majority of the time. So the doctor comes in, and he's like, let me see how this is going. So he, does the quick one-over. And he's like, I don't think this baby's going to come out this way. And we were like, oh, all right. Well, that's wonderful. And neither of us wanted a C-section. Nobody wants a C-section, right?
Right.
But he's like, we talk about it, but I think this is probably what we're going to want to do. So we talked about it briefly, and she was just exhausted. It's 3:30 in the morning at this point. And we just decided, all right, well, this is what we have to do. This is what we have to do. So they take her back, and this is the other worst part of this particular labor is you don't get to go. I didn't get to go back with her for the start for the start of this. They go back and they prep her for 30 minutes, and so I got left in the room by myself while they wheel my wife out and spend 30 minutes prepping her. It was a very long 30 minutes.
Yeah, I can't imagine that was in any way fun.
Yeah, and then they call me in, and I have to go in total scrubs, including a mask, because it's an operating room. So I've got all my scrubs on and everything, and I go in, and they kind of have this cool thing where the woman's on her back, just laying on the operating table, and they have this big, almost they've got all of her gowns and stuff, and a big sheet that they hang up, so ice would sit by her face, and they'd have this sheet up, and so I can't see anything of what's going on in the surgery, which is good. Keep in mind, I actually saw a lot of surgeries when I was in hospitals in pharmacy school, so it really wouldn't have bothered me, but it would have bothered me because it was her that they were doing that to. So, but I got to be shielded from all of that. So they've got this big sheet up, and it took about a half an hour, but they said it was the most amazing moment because they just said, we see his hand, because apparently his hand was out, and then there was another 2-minute break, and then it was basically just, we have a baby, and he immediately started crying. And when he started crying, my wife and I lost it, because that's the time you know that your baby is okay, because the thing that they're most concerned about is the lungs. And if they are crying, their lungs are okay. So we totally lost it at that moment. And they did this funny thing, and when I tell the story now, this is the way I describe it. It was almost like a magician thing where they we have a baby, and they kind of hold the baby up over the big sheet
blanket
that they have up so you can't see anything. And it's voila, baby. And they show it to you for a second, and then they take the baby away because they have to go weigh it and everything and get all the things. So it was like a magic trick. No baby, here's a baby. And I got to immediately get up and go over to where they were weighing the baby and everything. And the other thing that they said before we even saw the baby was, "Oh my God, he's huge! Oh my gosh, his hands are huge!" And I was like, well, how big is this baby? So then we did the whole weighing thing, and it was 9 pounds 15 ounces. And I have a great picture of him next to the scale that says 9 pounds 15 ounces. But he was just perfect, and he is perfect. But it was one of the most incredible moments. It really was. That and getting married were by far the two best days of my life. So it's 5 a.m, and they wheel us into the post-op room where we then are sitting there recovering, and Max is already asleep. So Max has a quick feeding, and then he falls asleep, and he's already asleep. But we're just totally like our adrenaline is going 100 miles an hour. Casey's exhausted, but neither of us can sleep.
Yeah.
And it was just there were nurses coming in, and they took some blood, and they did all that kind of stuff, and that kind of started the road to where we are now, where it's eat, sleep, and poop is pretty much the general daily. Those if I had to put the goals of the baby on a board for every day, it's eat, sleep, and poop. So,
but your 3 priorities are eat, play, game. So one of them is aligned with you.
That's right. And sleeping is one of my secondary goals, so that's kind of aligned too. And who doesn't love to poop? So,
well, of course.
So that was my weeks, and that explains why I was not here last week. I apologize, listener. I promise I would have loved to have been here, but there were some slightly more, we'll say, important things that were going on at the time.
Look, I'm just glad that maybe from following this episode, I will be able to at least have a comparable weekend to you. Because every weekend for you has been like, oh, we're finding out the gender of the human being we created. Or, yes, 13 hours in a hospital, spawning my son. It's how am I supposed to, how do I compete with that?
Well, now I'm going to talk about my son, though. So that's... that doesn't probably make it any easier, right?
Damn it, John. All right. Fine.
But it was really awesome. It was really awesome.
No, I know you, and I know you. I knew what was going on. Like the last week, I'm basically just like, John is probably the happiest person I know right now. Well, maybe, I don't know, your wife may be happier because she was the one that had to deal with all of that physical trauma.
It's true.
I know you were there.
And you're probably right. She probably is happier than me for that reason. But
yeah.
It's been
But of the men that I know, I figured you would be the happiest person in the world. My oldest brother told me that he, like, the minute he had his first baby, he just, ever since then, he's just been a huge crier. He's like, man, I'll cry at everything. Like, dude, like, taking her to the movies, like some Disney movie, like end of Frozen, I'll just lose it, man. I'll just like, so like, that's his story. Have you noticed, like, are you going to burst out crying in the middle of this podcast? Have you noticed, like, that you've become more sensitive?
Mostly because I have to listen to you talk for a while. So
yeah, okay, that's fair.
That's one of, that'd be one of the reasons, but, I'll be honest, I've always kind of been more, I guess, on the sensitive side, so I've never had a problem crying.
No big deal. Obviously, like, anybody's going to cry when they have a baby. Like, that's that moment. But
we totally lost it. We both totally lost it at that moment. It was...
yeah. I meant more since then. Like, if it makes a sound, do you just, like, totally lose it? Or have you watched any Disney movies lately?
Nothing like that. So he hasn't done anything specifically that would just make me burst into tears or anything. But, I don't know. To be honest, probably not, because like there was like there's so much uncertainty in a pregnancy the whole time with like is your baby actually okay, because you can't see him or her. So it's like there's just this constant question of whether he's actually okay in there. And so there's so much relief when you finally meet them, when you finally see them and see that they're okay, that's part of the reason I think why it is such an emotional experience. That, and you're just super excited to meet your baby. So like when he takes his first steps or something, I don't see myself crying at something like that. I see myself being overjoyed and probably a little terrified, because that means he's going to be able to get around a little better. But not like... I just don't see myself getting super emotional about that kind of thing now. Now, who knows? Maybe I will. But it was...
Okay, so you should be able to hold it together, at least through this episode.
I think so.
Okay. Assuming I don't do too much talking, because that's what makes most people cry.
Yeah, you're true. Yeah, you're being very true.
I am true.
You are true.
Well, no, again, like, seriously, congratulations. Like, I tried not to bother you this week. I was definitely, you were definitely on my mind. Like, I knew I am not going to get all fucking whatever, but whatever. I wasn't thinking about you jackass. No, I knew it was up. I try not to bug you too much. I hope things are awesome. It is really good talking to you because God knows I'd rather talk to anybody than Ryan. That was possibly the longest hour of my life last week, and probably the listener too. Noticed far less website traffic since that episode. So strange. So here we are now. But no, I'm super, super, super pumped for you. And I will say, like, you know, some people complain about baby photos on Facebook and when you put them up or whatever and like, oh, babies look the same and stuff. Dude, your kid is fucking beautiful.
So let me tell you another. Okay, so to wrap up the baby discussion, one of the big advantages of having a C-section baby is that your baby is beautiful because there is zero passage through the birth canal. So he really is, and I mean, okay, I might be a little biased because he's kind of my kid, but I think he's kind of perfect. He's pretty amazing.
Like, you posted a picture within 24 hours of him being born, and he is a really good-looking baby. Seriously.
He's a beautiful baby. He's a handsome young man.
He is, and I might be biased too. Like, I don't know, but I saw it, and I got a little. I mentioned this in our super little Facebook group, and at this point, the listeners just like, oh my god, just make out already. But no, like, John and I have known each other forever, so it's weird. Because last thing I remember, we were in second grade watching Spaceballs on 2x speed at John's house, over and over and over
which is a
again.
fantastic way to watch that movie, by the way.
Oh my god, in double speed and then sometimes in slow-mo, and we're doing this over and over, just rewinding it, and then suddenly there's like a human being, so I got a little emotional, I'm not gonna lie, in like a much more mild, it's kind of weird, I don't know how to process this kind of way, because you now have the most life experience points. You have 2. You have marriage and baby. And I've got 0 life experience points. Unless you count going to a college party that gets shut down by the cops when you're 28 years old. In which case, I've got that locked down pretty good. But I don't think that gets you a life experience point. I really don't. At least not in the same...
It's a different kind of life experience.
It certainly is. I think maybe some of the drug and alcohol laden life experiences I've got you beat, but in terms of we'll go milestone points. You're
I don't know. I wouldn't compare lives like that. They don't need to be. No. They don't need to be similar.
It's not a race, but your life does sound awesome right now. So that's super awesome. And listener, I hope you learned something about birthing, because like God knows I did. I was interested that you kept calling it laboring, like she was laboring, not she was in labor. Is that like do they call it laboring in the hospital?
Well,
or were you just kind of using that?
Well, no. I mean, everybody knows that passive voice is a weak way to talk.
Ah, yes, it is. Very good.
It really is. It really is an active process. Is the reason. Even though I say it is just your body doing stuff, she was working to get through pain and things. So it was an active process. And being in labor makes it sound much more passive. But it's definitely not. So I think it's more of a subconscious thing. I didn't even realize I said that, to be honest. But I'm pretty sure that's why.
Gotcha. Okay. Awesome. Well, welcome back. Don't ever miss an episode ever again, or your ass is fired. And I'm taking this podcast to Hollywood.
Who are you going to find in Hollywood?
John Locke.
From Lost?
Yeah, John Locke from Lost. No idea what the actor's name is, but that old bald dude.
I don't think he's got a name. I think his name is John Locke.
His name literally is John Locke. Oh boy!
So I apologize that I went first, but obviously you asked me, and I was very excited to share that story. But I will ask you, how was your weekend?
You asshole.
Well, I do want to know.
You couldn't even say it with a straight face.
Well, it's hard. It's tough. It's tough for me to say that with a straight face now because it's not fair. Like it's not, and I know it's not fair, but it's not fair.
And technically, what you had happen was last week. Like yours was 2 weeks ago.
It's true. I kind of cheated, didn't I?
So you kind of cheated. So I don't know. The last 2 days, I'm guessing you were just changing diapers a lot and feeding baby.
That's absolutely. And I'm not doing any of the feeding because we're breastfeeding, so I don't have to do any of that. But I was changing a lot of diapers, and So, have you ever changed a diaper?
Nope.
Okay, and I hadn't either. It's so much easier than I thought it was going to be.
Really?
Yeah. It's not nowhere near as scary as you think it's going to be. At all.
Oh, that's relief. That was my number one thing stopping me from having a baby. Well, that and not having a female significant other.
Well, that could be part of it, too.
Kind of part of it. So there's that. That's good to know. And does your wife give you experience points every time you change the diaper? Like, can you level up in diaper changing?
I think I may have changed more diapers than her at this point. Which makes sense, because she's doing all the feeding.
Right, so she is giving you experience. Are you keeping track, like, on a chart of the experience points you're getting, or does she get experience points?
We should.
Yeah,
you should do that.
You've got to gain some levels in this, dude.
I think I have been gaining levels.
If you don't gamify it, then there's no relevance to this podcast, and you'll no longer ever be allowed to talk about your wife or kid or job or living room.
Okay, point taken.
All of those. None of those. Neither, nor, as is, are, was, were. Who, what, when, where, why. Nick News W5. Could you tell Ryan was on last week? Because that was him right there. Just channeling. Hey, how was my weekend? Hey, mine was kind of like yours. I saw the Lego movie.
Yeah?
Because that's for kids.
Was that as... You definitely love hanging out with the kids. Was that as good as everybody said it was?
It was, dude, 2 thumbs up. Highly recommend. Highly recommend.
I mean, I've heard nothing but good things about that movie.
Yeah, John, it is written so... The writing is so smart. It makes sense. The whole thing makes sense. You look at it and you're like, oh, Lego is just a brick. How do you make it into a movie? And the characters make sense. The product tie-in makes sense. The self-aware, like it's painfully self-aware in the best possible way and self-referential, but also so smart and cleverly written. And it's a brilliant movie. I was legitimately, I laughed out loud a lot. I was laughing out loud a lot. It's just a happy, fun, positive, like nothing bad happens. Just everything is cute and quirky, and it's impossible not to have a smile on your face throughout pretty much the entire movie.
You make it sound pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's really, really good. Like, I would highly recommend, whenever, it'll probably be out of theaters by the time you and your wife are done kind of 24/7 baby time and all that stuff, but at least rent it. I mean, you two should sit down and watch it for a little date night, because it would be very nice and happy and fun. It was a very good movie. So
I appreciate
highly
that.
recommend.
Thank you for thinking about us. Thank you.
Yeah, always. So this podcast, I've come so many times, come so dangerously close to saying nice things to you, and I'm not sure how to process it. It's really bothering me. You asshole.
There you go. You got right back on track there.
Thank you.
I see what
Thank
you did.
you. So, not only, and I didn't really do much else exciting this weekend. I think we should probably, since the listeners just let us indulge ourselves for so long, we should talk about what they've been playing, and then talk a little bit about all the games you've been playing, because I know you've had so much time to play video games lately.
That's all I've been doing.
All you've been doing.
Yep.
So, our listeners.
Yep.
Are you ready for the listener segment? I don't know. Sometimes you have things to say.
No, I'm ready. My body is ready.
No thoughts in. Okay. Yeah, right. Your body's ready. Great. Okay, cool. So, I asked on Sunday. Usually I ask on Friday. This is a big change. So glad I'm pointing this out, because that's so interesting to you. Asked on Sunday what the listeners played this weekend. Jamie said, surprisingly, barely anything. Don't know why, but I was wrapped up in non-gaming things like watching Attack on Titan. Have you heard of this Attack on Titan thing?
I've heard of it. I know it's an anime, right? Or is it a live action show? It's an anime. I know it's an anime. That's all I know about it. That's all I know about it.
For me, like on Google Plus with all our gamer listeners, followers, and all that, I'm seeing a lot about Attack on Titan, and then I go to Facebook, and all I hear about is House of Cards. My friends are just obsessed with that show. Have you ever seen House of Cards?
My wife has watched the entire 2 seasons that are on Netflix in 2 days.
Your wife and you, or just your wife?
Not me, just my wife.
And so she's a pretty big fan.
She
obviously.
likes it. She's saying it's like one of the best shows she's ever watched.
Okay. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of that. So we need to watch Attack on Titan and apparently House of Cards.
Apparently.
But Jamie did play some We Fit You since he just bought it, and he's likely to play some more Bravely Default later today. He says Bravely Default proper, so not the demo, I'm guessing.
That must be what that
And
means.
Bravely Default, I'm going to tell you about Bravely Default in this episode.
That's
John.
good. You tell me.
I will. Watch out.
Yeah, you better tell me.
Vintage gamer Jarly has been playing Super Meat Boy. Still haven't played it. It's on my desktop.
When you play it, when you finally get around to it, go into it with a lot of patience because you need a lot of patience.
I watched, I actually had a movie night a couple Fridays ago. Some of my coworkers came over and watched Dance Dance Revolution, The Warrior's Path. You remember that movie?
So I was really hoping that you were going to say that you watched Indie Game the movie, which actually deals with Super Meat Boy, which is what we were talking about.
No, why would I say that?
Because that's what our listener played.
Don't care about that. Vintage Gamer Charlie, you're great, but this is all about me. Actually, no, this story is relevant to Super Meat Boy. After Dance Dance Revolution, The Warrior's Path, you remember that movie?
Dancing Games are serious business.
Yeah, Dancing Games are serious business. We, one of my coworkers saw, because we watched it on my TV. My PC's hooked up to my TV. We were watching Dance Dance Revolution, The Warrior's Path on YouTube, because that's where it is. And afterwards, my coworker saw on my desktop the Super Meat Boy icon. He goes, "Oh, can I play it?" And I was like, "All right." So he just started playing it. And so I watched him play through the first world. So I have seen it now, live. So there's that.
Uh-huh.
Our listener, Miles, has been playing Dishonored and Fallout 3. What's Dishonored?
Oh, I talked about Dishonored on an episode of this show. It is a really good game, is what it is.
Oh, is that the episode I wasn't listening to anything you said during, or is
that's
that
every fucking episode
that's
we ever
every
record?
Episode, right? Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Oh, are you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
So our listener Christopher, the robot master, not like Dr. Wily's robot masters, but like he builds robots.
No, it's a robot.
A robot?
It's a robot.
Okay. So the robot master, Christopher the robot master, he wrote a dialogue in his comment, and now I get to read it using voices. Are you excited about this?
I kind of wish he hadn't done that.
I will be playing the roles of both Christopher and his memory. So two different things, and like Christopher is going to sound like this, kind of like a Anchorman, and memory is going to sound like this, because
that's what memory sounds like.
That's what memory sounds like, right? Okay, all right. So here, so this is what Christopher did this weekend. Memory, did I play anything over the weekend? No, I don't believe you did. Didn't I play... ... No, you didn't. But didn't I do that thing in that game where... ... Stop making a fool of yourself. You didn't play anything over the weekend. Oh yeah, I didn't play anything. Chris, you could have played anything while writing this dialogue. End scene.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
Those years, the decades of improv comedy classes that you took.
Thank you.
They show. They show.
Thank you. Even though that was completely scripted, thus leaving zero room for improvisation, But thank you, nevertheless.
They show.
What?
They show.
Thank you. Justin is still playing Bravely Default and The Walking Dead Season 2, Episode 2. Is that seriously a game?
Yeah, the Walking Dead game came out with its second season. Why is that?
I can't tell if you're being serious or not. I can't tell if you're being serious or not.
I am being serious. So the Walking Dead game, it did really well, and it was only like $20. And when a game does really well and they want to make more money on it, what do? They make a sequel. Well, Double Fine is doing kind of a different thing where they are making sequels, but they're basically... And they've done this before. This is not the first game ever that they've done to do this. Like, Sam & Max has done this, where they come out with seasons of, like, the same game. And they don't charge full prices for them. They charge, like, $20. And so they've just come out with the second season.
That's weird and sounds made up and stupid, just like your face.
So yeah, that's that.
So John is playing Pac-Man Championship Edition, Fruit Ninja Connect Sports Season 2, Skyrim, Tetris, and Assassin's Creed 2. Now I've inquired, and John actually plays Fruit Ninja Connect with a child, getting back on the child train of the theme of the show, your baby and my Lego movie, Fruit Ninja Connect.
Oh, and the parties you go to.
And the parties they go to. Would you play a Connect game, do you think? Do you think that was going to be in the early repertoire or decoupage, if you will, with your little one?
I think that there's a very good chance. I'm thinking that as far as like early gaming experiences with my kid go, we're probably going to see mostly touchscreen interface stuff first, right? Because that's the easiest to understand.
Oh, come on. We were playing NES when we were 5.
That's true, and trust me, I will be steering him in that direction. Don't get me wrong, but his only exposure to video games is not going to be in the house. It's going to be other places too, and he's going to see mommy and daddy on their cell phones. So that's going to be his first experience.
That's true. All right, sounds good. I just had a thought because I was gonna say you should let him play Plants vs. Zombies 2, and then I just had this like in some bizarre alternate world where little kids, before they understand how to game or read, they know how to purchase microtransactions. Like, he doesn't know how to do certain things, but he sure knows how to give EA $6 for this next level.
That's a terrifying prospect. That's a true future that could actually happen. So be careful what you wish for.
I'm not wishing for it. I just found it very funny in my head. So that happened.
That
all right.
Absolutely terrifying.
And Pac-Man Championship Edition, I got that on the Steam sale. On sale on Steam at some point. And actually, before I saw the Lego movie on Saturday, I played Pac-Man with the person that I was with, and the multiplayer Pac-Man. Have you played it?
Oh, Pac-Man Championship Edition DX?
Yeah.
I've heard it's awesome, but I've never played it.
Oh, dude, it's so fun. My first experience was playing at a bar in Portland, Oregon, on a road trip last year with some jerks, and it was 4 players, and I was really drunk and screaming at the top of my lungs the whole time. Can you believe that?
That's kind of how you play video games sometimes.
Yeah, and by sometimes you mean always. And then our listener James said, I stupidly rekindled my love of Fallout 3. I have a billion other games to play, but no, the wasteland beckons, only 5 achievements left.
There's nothing stupid about Fallout 3, so if you want to rekindle your love for that, you go for it, because that game is awesome.
I think it's pronounced "you go girl," even though this was clearly a male listener.
I'm sorry, "you go girl." I'm sorry if I didn't.
Yeah, because the colloquial phrase "you go" is always followed by "girl." It's a historical recitative musically.
Historical
it's like
decoupage.
Yes, it's a decoupage of sorts. So that's what the listener's been playing. Congratulations, listener. You probably played more than John. Did you play at all when you were in... I mean, I'm guessing you wouldn't have when you're in the hospital, obviously. But since then, have you had a little gaming time, or not really?
Actually, I did play stuff in the hospital. I did play some stuff in the hospital, actually. But what I kind of did was I started tying up some loose ends that I had in my gaming decoupage. So, for instance, there was a playthrough of Final Fantasy IV that I had on my iPad. And Final Fantasy IV, the version that they have on iPads is that upgraded 3D DS version that they made that has augmentations in it, which I really like. There was kind of a lot of controversy surrounding that. A lot of people didn't like that. I actually really, really liked those additions. But I was basically at the end of the game. I was in the Giant of Babel, like 2 days before Max came. So I did that, and I completed that game again, and that game totally still holds up. It's still a really good game. And then I talked about Final Fantasy V on this podcast a couple of weeks ago. Might have been like 10 episodes ago or so. And I said I was going to keep playing it, and I did, but then I stopped because the game got hard, as it is wont to do. And I was somewhere in the third world when basically if you've never played Final Fantasy V before in terms of like game structure, it's super linear, and then there's this job system that opens up, but the general story is still very linear. And then you get to the third world, and there's a point in the third of four worlds. There's a point where you can go to the end of the game, or you can go do like seven of these side quests. And I had just gotten to that point, so I did all of the side quests, and I beat Final Fantasy V. So
congratulations!
That game is cool.
That game is stupidly hard.
It wasn't too bad. The last boss was surprisingly easy with kind of the outfit of jobs that I had put together. So, but then I tried to do the optional dungeon, which is crazy hard that they put in for like the most recent version. So that didn't go very well at all.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that I did, and the thing that I'm most excited about, and actually the thing that if I want to spend any time on anything I did, this is what I'd spend it on, was Diablo 3 just came out with its pre-expansion patch. Now Blizzard has started to do this with their games, and I think it's really cool. But what they'll do, they've done this with World of Warcraft for a long time now, but it looks like they're kind of adopting this with other games too, is there's a bunch of stuff that they'll add in the expansion packs when they come out. But about a month before, it's usually about a month, they will release a ton of the planned changes with none of the like additional content. They just, because they're going to change a bunch of stuff in the expansions usually as well. And as well as add on a bunch of stuff. But they just give you all of the changes of the expansion to kind of give you an idea of where they're going with the game about a month before, so you can play around with all those new systems, and then if you want to, you can see where they've gone with the game, see if you like it, and then you can buy the expansion.
That's pretty cool.
And go through all the new content. So that new patch, the expansion comes out on the 25th of March, and that new patch just came out. Well, I was kind of getting sick of playing games on my iPad, and I hadn't really busted out my 3DS, and I don't really know why, but I didn't. And I was like, well, my computers are downstairs, but I'm not spending any time downstairs because Max is upstairs, and I'm not going to not spend time with Max. But he sleeps a lot, and when he's sleeping, there's not a lot you can do with him. Like, he sleeps a lot. He sleeps a lot, right? So I was like, I need something to do. And I don't have a laptop, but my wife does. My wife has an Apple. I've only ever gamed on PCs. I've never gamed on Apple since before I was like 12 years old. The last time I gamed on an Apple, right? So I was like, well, you've got a relatively new Apple, and it's not like set for gaming at all. It is just set to do normal everyday activity, right?
Right.
But Diablo 3 is not a graphically intense system. So I was just thinking to myself, I was like, Blizzard has all their stuff, like they do all their stuff online, and all your stuff is connected to your Battle.net account. I wonder if, I bought this Diablo 3 on the PC, but I know that you can play it on Apple machines. I wonder if you can just use your Battle.net account and download it on an Apple. And sure enough, you want to talk about like doing it right for the customer. All I had to do, start up Battle.net, I downloaded the client, opened it up, it's got all of my games that I own by Blizzard, and it's just got buttons that say download. I mean, it's not exactly like Steam, but it's similar to Steam. Except that we're talking about cross OS, which Steam does not. Steam, I think, does have a couple games that do that, but this is just all of Blizzard's products.
Yeah,
like, if you own it on one OS, you own it on all of them that they have support for. So I was super impressed with that because I didn't expect it. I really didn't. I was just kind of curious, and I was following this patch and the fact that the patch came out, and so I was like, well, I want to try it, and this is like the perfect game because I can just sit in there, I can kill a bunch of stuff, I can do my Diablo 3 thing, and then if I need to pause it, it's a game I can pause, which is really nice, so I can just pause it, go take care of Max for a while, take care of my wife if she needs something, that kind of thing, and then jump right back in. It is kind of the perfect game to play right now. So I jumped in. They have changed a lot. The general, like the basic bones of the game all remain the same. So I know I've talked about this on the podcast before too. I've definitely talked about Diablo 3 because I've sunk a ton of hours into it. But the general bones of the game are still the same. You're still going through like all the same acts and stuff. Like that's all the same. But they've changed the way a lot of the abilities work, which is kind of fresh. Because when I stopped playing the game the last time, there were basically like 2 or 3 builds for every character that were the generally accepted. Like these are kind of the way you have to play the game, because these abilities are generally considered a little more like overpowered than other abilities. Well, now they've kind of tweaked those abilities where they've weakened some of those abilities that were just considered incredibly powerful before, and they've boosted some other abilities in some interesting ways. So that's kind of fun. So characters kind of feel completely different now. And the best thing they added was the loot system, because they've completely removed the auction house. So the auction house was a very controversial part of Diablo 3 to start. It was basically you would trade with other players on this virtual auction house that existed outside of the in-game game, and you'd be able to put your stuff up for both in-game currency and real money, and that was how you got new gear a lot of the time. But the big problem and the big controversy around that, and if you don't know anything about this, go back 2 years and read about it. But the gist of the controversy was you stalled out on advancing your character through gear that you found in the game, and instead, in order to get upgrades, you would basically have to go to the auction house to get upgrades. And it stopped being fun, because the fun of the game is to kill something hard, get it to drop something that was really cool that you then could equip on your character. So the new loot system that they implemented is they have basically made you find items that are exclusively usable by your character class when you're playing. So you find way less items than you did before, but you find way less items than you did before, but the quality tends to be better, and there's a better progression of stuff that you find to equip to make your character better, and it's much more satisfying that way. And again, they revamped a bunch of stuff to make it a little more streamlined, and it's a better game. They've made it a much better game, and they've totally rekindled my love for it. Cannot wait for the expansion, which comes out again on March 25th, so it's super soon, and they're going to be adding a ton of great stuff in the expansion. So I'm super excited about that. So that's basically what I've been playing.
Yeah, you got out of it because you were playing a ton of it, and then at one point I thought you said, I'm done with Diablo 3. And you had a specific reason. Was it because of that item deal?
I think it was. Because you ended up doing like the exact same run through the game over and over and over again. And
But isn't that every MMO?
it's not an MMO. It's a loot grind game.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to call the loot grind game an MMO. Because how is there a difference?
It's a loot game. Well, I mean, an MMO is a persistent online world. This world is not persistent. It's generated when you enter it. But it just got, the reason why it got stale was because they don't have enough randomly generated stuff in the original to keep it interesting. So you do that is the technical term. That's right, randomly generated stuff.
Yeah, RGS.
There aren't enough environments to go through to keep it interesting. But in the expansion, what they're going to be adding is they're going to be adding these completely randomly generated stuff. That is going to be different every time you play, along with like specific quests that are tailored to those areas that are randomly generated. And so not only are you going to have new areas that you've never seen before every time you go in, but there's also going to be a specific purpose for you to go in there that you can then focus on as well, rather than just running through to get gear. You can like have another objective to do. And it looks really good. Honestly, the expansion looks really good. It's a little more directed. And you know what else I played while we're on the Blizzard bandwagon? I played Heart.
Do you think you'll get the expansion?
I'll absolutely get the expansion.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
so we'll follow up on that later.
Wait for it.
But back on the Blizzard bandwagon.
Yeah, other thing I've played was Hearthstone, which is that new Blizzard collectible card game, online collectible card game. It's finally an open beta, so anybody that wants to try it can. And I talked about SoulForge a lot. Remember when I was on my SoulForge kick?
Dude, every time I'm on Steam, half my friends list is playing SoulForge.
Yeah, and you know what? I can't do SoulForge anymore. And the reason why I can't do SoulForge is because the decks were not curated well enough. There weren't strict enough rules to make decks balanced so that kind of anybody could play. Because you could have, in that game, you can have 3 or 4 of the same copy of a card, and you could have as many legendary cards, which is the best rarity, as you want. So it got to the point where there would be people that, and the matchmaking system was shit. It was horrible. So there would come to a point where you would play online with other people, and you would encounter these decks that were like literally all legendaries, and that was dumb, right? Like there'd be literally no way. Unless that person played the stupidest they could possibly play, there'd be no way to beat a deck like that. So in Hearthstone, that was why I stopped playing SoulForge. Hearthstone is much more directed. So the way that this works is it's based on all the character classes of World of Warcraft, which there are 9, and you pick a character class, and that character class has a set number of cards that they can use that are specific to that character class. Which kind of interesting. It makes like when you're playing different character classes, it makes your character feel unique because only they can have certain cards. And then there's also neutral cards that anybody can put in their deck. And the way the game works is everything's got a mana cost, and it ranges from 0 to 10, and then you've got a mana bar. And you start off the first turn with 1 mana crystal, and then you spend as much of that as you want, and then you end your turn. And then the next turn you have 2, and then that ramps up every single turn. You get an extra mana crystal to spend, all the way up to 10, to turn 10. So the game escalates very quickly. A typical game of Hearthstone has taken about 5 to 15 minutes. It's very fast. Super snappy, super casual, way easy to just play around and then put it down. So they've got the way, that's kind of the way their deck structure is set up. But there's just a bunch of, you've got your side of the board. You play minions. All of your minions have like different powers, and they all have different rule-breaking stuff that your standard card game will have. Some things can attack on the first turn, for instance. Other things can have an ability called Taunt, where you have to attack the creature with Taunt first before you can attack the other person. But then they've got some other cool things where each character has its own 2-cost class-specific action. So, like, the shaman which is my current favorite class to play. But the shaman has a two mana cost totem summon, and you use it, and it summons a random totem. Because in World of Warcraft, one of the things that shaman can do is they can summon totems that give them buffs. So like that makes the shaman different, right?
Okay.
The paladin can spend its 2 resource cost to summon a 1/1 hired guard, and then that just kind of pops out on the battlefield. It's got a 1/1 minion, and then the object of the game is just to whittle the opponent's hit points down to 0, and both sides start with 30. But the thing that's so great about it is the classes feel incredibly different, which is really cool, and they've got much stronger regulation of their decks, of their deck structure. Like you can only have 1 legendary in the deck, period. Otherwise, you can only have 2 copies of cards rather than 4. So it feels like there might be a little more balance there than there was in Soulforge. I was so tired of just getting stomped every time I played Soulforge. And as Blizzard is just what Blizzard does, what they do best, and their matchmaking is perfect. And I win about 50% of my games, which is exactly what they're looking for in their matchmaking systems. So their matchmaking system is just perfect. Like, it is never overly frustrating to play against human opponents in that game. And you never feel... I have not once, and I've probably played about 10 to 15 games against human opponents, never once have I felt just completely overmatched by their deck. Blizzard makes good games. They make good games. I mean, their games are awesome. So that is... I'm really liking that, and I love how casual it is. I love that I can just pick it up, I can play it for 10, 15 minutes, play a round or 2, and then put it down. There's quests every day. Keep in mind, the game is free, so there's an in-game currency, of course, that you can build up, and then you can also buy cards with real money in the beta. But I'm pretty sure it's all going to carry over into the regular game at this point. But they make opening the cards really fun. Like, there's a pack that you put on this big play mat, and you open the pack, and it like explodes in confetti and sparkles. And then you individually turn over every one of the cards, and there's this really chunky sound effect. It's like shoom when you turn over the card, and it like zooms in really close and shows the card. It's got a great. I could see myself spending a bunch of money. I won't spend a bunch of money on the game, but I could see myself spending a bunch of money on the game.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good.
I'm really surprised, I'm not going to lie, how much gaming you got in. But I'm not also surprised because that baby's sleeping a lot. So I guess you do have to do something.
And keep in mind, I'm not really a TV watcher all that much. So, like, gaming is kind of what I do. Like, that's what I do in my free time instead of watching TV shows.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, I haven't watched much of anything lately, actually. So,
right.
So there you go.
But you have played something.
I've played some stuff. In the mail, after the GameStop debacle of pre-ordering, even though it came out on February 11th, I didn't get Lightning Returns Final Fantasy XIII in the mail until February 14th. So Lightning was my Valentine.
Is that really the full name of that game?
Lightning Returns Final Fantasy XIII?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is dumb.
You're dumb.
Yeah, okay.
What's wrong with that? You got a problem with my woman? I have started that. I have barely played it. Because when I get a newish RPG, I want to sit down and play it for 6 hours straight. I don't want to play it for an hour or two and then have to put it down. I hate that. I hate it. So I've only had like one chunk of time to spend. I've maybe played 4 or 5 hours, or maybe 6, or maybe 12. I don't know. No, but I've not played it a lot. I will tell you that when I get around to reviewing it, either next week or the following week, like sometime in March, I will review this game. I cannot wait to explain the plot to you, John. You are going to... Do you know anything about the plot?
I know that Lightning's Jesus. I know that
Okay.
I know that she's kind of a Jesus character. That's kind of all I know about it, though.
Do not read any more about the plot, because I want to go into explicit detail about the plot of this game in a podcast to hear your live reaction, because you are going to lose it. And I don't mean you're going to lose it like crying, like lose it like you had a baby lose it. Like, you're just going to flip out, and it's going to be awesome.
Because because it's written so well.
It is, yes, because it's so well written. That's exactly what I'm saying. Oh my God, John! No, I was literally watching the opening cutscene, thinking John is going to a brick when I tell him what this game is about.
But you know what's exciting is that, well, I suppose I don't really mean it's exciting, but what's interesting is that even you are able to kind of objectively say that there might be something wrong.
Something is wrong. Oh, something is very wrong. Something is incredibly wrong with this entire scenario.
Okay.
So we'll
and
see.
I mean,
what
you
happens.
have been like the biggest Final Fantasy 13 Fabula Nova Crystallis apologist that I know. So
I haven't apologized for much, have I?
To me, you feel slightly blindly devoted to it.
Oh, I disagree. I think I see it for what it is, but I think I find more in entertainment value in the game than you do, and I think that's fair. Like, I know Final Fantasy 13, painfully linear until you get to the end, and then it gets really fun. Well, then it's really, but I like the story too.
I actually really liked the story in 13. I thought the story in 13 was one of the strongest points. It really was. It was actually a very good story.
Yeah, so I like
13-2,
but
not a good story.
Yeah. 13-2, I in retrospect have mixed feelings about, but I thought it was overall fun. I thought it was more fun than you did because you apparently are better at the game than me. I had some issues beating things that you apparently did not, so it was harder for me than for you. And also, I downloaded a lot of the DLC, which a lot of it was a nostalgia cash-in, and a lot of it turned out to be just brutally difficult to the point where if you didn't have a perfectly raised and perfected party and strategy, there was literally no way to beat it. It would be like tower defense games where there is only one possible way to beat the level because of one specific tower configuration, and any deviance of that is completely null and voids the entire experience. Like, you cannot beat that level. That's Final Fantasy 13-2's downloadable content.
That doesn't sound very fun.
No, it's not. I like when there's more than one way to beat something, so that's kind of annoying. So I've been playing Lightning Returns, if you can even say I've been playing it. Let's say I started Lightning Returns. But I have beaten the Bravely Default demo, and John, this is your game.
Okay.
You have to play this game. You absolutely have to play this game. It is so it's a role-playing game by Square Enix. Have you read much about it?
I have. I think I know quite a bit about it, actually.
Okay. So I'll just summarize it a bit for the listener. I don't want to get into like excessive detail because I feel like a lot has been written and said about it already. And I'm very much looking forward to playing the full game. In addition, 2 of our listeners or more are playing through the game or have played through the game. So a lot of people are pretty familiar with it. But for the uninitiated, this is the spiritual successor, straight on, to old school Final Fantasy. And I'm talking Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3 on the NES, and a little bit of like Final Fantasy 4 and 5 on Super Nintendo. And by a spiritual successor, I'm talking about the old school battle system, the turn-based combat, the kind of medieval world, like you apparently get an airship in the game, there are different terrains. All of the items and spells are Final Fantasy name conventions.
I knew
there
that.
There are Phoenix Downs, eye drops, antidotes, remedies, you name it, Phyra, Blizzara, Thundara for the spells, things like that, Kira, Protect, Shell. All of the Final Fantasy battle conventions are used in this game, like just straight up. Now they add the Brave and Default system. So you have you start a battle with 0. It's either brave points or battle points. I don't know what it stands for, but you start with 0 BP.
It's brave points.
It's brave points. Okay, great. So if you do an action, a lot of actions are free. They don't cost any brave points. But if you perform an action that costs brave points, then you'll go down to -1 brave BP, and so on and so forth. So you need to build up those brave points by defaulting. And default is just defend. So if you defend on your turn, if you hit default or defend or on your turn, then you are defending. Your defenses increase substantially that turn, which is nice. Defend isn't a throwaway in this game. Your defense raises substantially, and you gain 1 BP. Then the next round begins, and then you can either spend that or you can build up more. Now, throughout the demo, you can only build up to 3 BP, and you can also go up to -2 or 3, but I'm not 100% clear on what happens when you go negative. At a certain point, if you go -2 or -3, then your character will default to defaulting. Like, you have no option of what to do with that character. So for the next couple turns, they're just going to default. But I think you can get away with -1 and still perform a free action that turn. I'm not really exactly sure, but for the most part, that's kind of the flow of combat. So that's a layer on top of like your typical things like magic points and hit points. And you have 4 party members. It is a static party throughout the game, and there's a job system. So when I say static party, I mean they are named for you. I presume because of the voice acting, because in the full version there's voice acting.
Okay.
There's not in the demo, but I presume that they're pre-named because of the voice acting, or you can change all their names, and I'm just totally full of crap. I don't know, but I believe they're pre-named for you with voice actors, and there's a job system. So they are unique characters with unique stats, but right off the bat, you have Freelancer, Knight, White Mage, Black Mage, Red Mage, and in the demo, anyway, Ninja, whatever the Dragoon is, I think they call it a Lancer, and 1 or 2 other ones. I think one is either a dancer or a bard or some type, but they call it like Singer. There's a couple deviations from the general Final Fantasy job class name Fair. And there are several jobs that are not unlocked right away, so presumably you have to build job levels of certain combinations to unlock more job classes, like in Final Fantasy Tactics. So, like in Tactics, you would have to
or
become
you find
a level...
them throughout the game.
Or you find them throughout the game. That's what you've read. So there's that.
Actually, I don't know. I said, or you
don't
find,
know.
Or
I
you
don't
find
know.
them throughout the game. I don't know.
No, I don't know either. So that's 2 of us. And throughout the demo, so the demo is, they call out that it's structured differently than the game. In the game, I guess there's a linear or at least semi-linear story. I don't know how open it is. Again, I'm just talking about the demo right now. I don't know how linear or non-linear the story is, but in this demo, you specifically just perform jobs. You run up to somebody in the town. They say, "Oh, I need 6 monster livers. Go roam the desert and get monster livers." You go fight some guys. You go back and you get a reward for it, and they give you a reward. Not only do they give you gold, but also they reward you with in-game items that will transfer over to the full version of the game. So if I buy the game or download the game, purchase the game, and I transfer over my save data, I now have, because I've completed all the jobs in the game, I now have like 10 or 12 pieces of equipment and items that will be in my inventory when I begin the game, which supposedly will make the beginning of the game a little bit easier for playing the full game, which makes perfect sense from an RPG.
Yeah, what a cool way to do that, right?
It's brilliant, and it makes perfect sense from an RPG standpoint because the early stages of an RPG are partially dedicated to you getting used to the combat and battle system. And having played the demo, it took me 5 hours to complete the demo. Having completed that, I'm familiar with their combat system, so I don't need that. So now when I go to the full game, I don't need that redundant playing and slow grind at the start of the game. I can kind of plow through things a bit more quickly, and then, the difficulty will settle in. But If I decide the game is too hard or too easy, I can also change the difficulty of the game at any point in the game by opening the menu and selecting easy, medium, or hard difficulty. And if I'm having trouble with a dungeon, I can also set the enemy encounter rate to either plus 100%, plus 50%, neutral, minus 50%, or minus 100%. So I can set it to 0 enemy encounters from the beginning of the game, which is that encounter slider that you mentioned last week, John, or 2 weeks ago.
Which is brilliant. Which is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, so it's an incredibly flexible game. It is challenging. It was very challenging as I got used to the battle system. I didn't quite love it at first. It didn't click, but once it clicked, it made a lot of sense, and I was like, okay, I get this. There's a rhythm, there's a flow. It's nice because the random battles they can be throwaway battles. There's even, if you press the Y button, it even sets an auto mode. So whatever commands you've input in previous battles, it will default to those commands. So you can essentially just set kind of a pre-recorded set of commands for your party.
Sure.
And you input all the commands for your party in a row, and then you just hit kind of action, and then everybody takes their turn. So, I'll make my actions for all 4 characters, and then I'll hit go. They'll all do their actions. The enemies will all do their actions. If I don't want to watch those animations or I'm grinding, you can hit right on the D-pad once or twice, and it will fast forward at differing speeds through the animations. So if I hit it once, then everything will show kind of double time. I can still follow what's going on. You're attacking quickly, the enemy's attacking quickly, but you can still see the damage counters and things. But if I'm just blazing through things and just want to get through the battle, I hit it twice, and it's like fast forwarding. It's like watching Spaceballs on double time, except without the sound effects changing pitch.
Which is pretty cool, right?
It's super cool. It's just like you said. You mentioned a couple weeks ago, this is like a traditional RPG that also pushes the genre forward, and this encapsulates all of the classic challenge and strategy and thought that goes behind an old school RPG like from the late 80s, early 90s, while coupling it with things in the modern era that make it more accessible, far more accessible. So if you've always liked JRPGs, but maybe you're a little impatient at times, perfect, just change some settings. Or if you think they're too hard, change some settings. So it's very flexible. And then more so, and you know how much I love Street Pass, right? Nintendo
Yes.
Street Pass?
Yes.
Like, I love a Street Pass. I love that idea. Well, I love the idea of I can not be playing a video game and still be playing a video game. Like, by walking to the store at the corner, I may be getting experience points / content on my device just for walking, for living, for doing stuff in real life. I feel like I'm being doubly productive. If I go grocery shopping with my 3DS, not only have I gone grocery shopping, but now I have 3 more guys on my Street Pass. It's just like an added bonus. It makes life better.
It's pretty cool.
I love it. In this game, there is I don't remember exactly how the story ties in, but there's a town on your bottom screen. When you're running around the world map, the main world map, there's a town on the bottom screen, and there are...
I think your town gets kind of decimated at the start of the game.
Sure, maybe.
And you have to rebuild it throughout the course of the game.
It could be. Yeah, so you have to rebuild it. And so at the bottom of the screen, let's say at the start of the game, there are like 4 icons. There's a couple icons of rubble, that rubble needs to be cleared from this area so you can open up this part of the town. And then there's a couple like, remains of a building. Oh, this building needs to be built back up. Well, you start with one character, and I can say, okay, I'm going to set this one character for the item shop, and he'll rebuild the item shop. Okay? It says it will take 6 hours to rebuild the item shop in real time. Great, cool, set him to work. If I want to play the game 6 hours later, it's done. Or, when you street pass with people, they add to your village. So I street pass 4 people, I have 4 more people in that village. If I set another person to that job, let's say there's 2 doing that job, then it only takes 3 hours in real time. If I set 4 people, it's only going to take 45 minutes, I think. So, like, the more people you set, the faster it gets done in real time. And that's pretty nifty as well. And in the demo, you only have a weapon shop, an item shop, a defensive item shop, equipment/armor shop, and I think that's about it. And you have to clear some rubble. So there's not a lot to play with, but presumably, if this town that you're rebuilding has any sense of scale with the game, I have Street Pass with like 12 or 13 people now in Bravely Default. So like these are people who own Bravely Default, which is awesome. I have Street Pass with that many people, and I could send them all to build something or construct something. So it kind of paces the game and has that waiting component, but you're picking up people on the streets and things like that. And you can also summon friends through the internet, and I think that's awesome. It's a super social component. Those items become available at select shops throughout the world that you can then buy. And of course, the game is paced because they're priced appropriately. So let's say I Street Pass a zillion people and I make my town huge. Okay, cool. I could buy like the strongest sword in the game. Well, guess what? It'll cost me like 80,000, whatever the currency is. And, you know, I'm only getting 18 per battle. So, like, it doesn't break the game because of the way it fits into the RPG.
Which is good.
Which is very good. So that's what makes... I love that social component. And you can also summon your Street Pass friends in battles. So I haven't looked a ton into this system, but I've utilized it. You can either send or summon during a battle. So if I select send, let's say with my character Edea, right? It's one of the mages. If I go to Edea and I select send, and then I use the black magic spell Fyra or Blizzara, then that will save my Street Pass character as Edea casting that spell. So when I Street Pass with somebody, Edea casting that spell becomes available in battle for them to summon by using either a battle point, or it might actually be play coins. I'm not sure. And play coins are the Nintendo DS currency you accumulate by walking around. You just get a couple play coins a day pretty much if you're walking around with it. So there's that, which is awesome. So you're semi-limited. I mean, there's not really, you can pretty much do a lot of that summoning, but you can only summon the characters I've Street Passed with. I can only summon once, and then they're no longer available. I haven't figured out how to replenish that. I think I have to Street Pass them again. So I'm pretty sure if it's like an acquaintance, quote unquote, if it's somebody you just pass by that's not on your friends list or anything, I think you can only summon them once until you Street Pass them again. But I'm not 100% sure because, again, I haven't looked super closely into it. And the features in the demo, they mentioned, are more limited than the features in the full version. So that could be different. But I know you can register friends through the internet in the full version, get their Street Pass characters, and then use them in battle. So Jamie, actually one of our listeners, was actually having a conversation, I believe, with another one of our listeners, or maybe somewhere else on Google+. Somebody was talking with him on Google+, and he was talking about, I'll send you my character and I'll just totally obliterate everything for you. So that's another component. If you're having a hard time in the game, you can, like John, if you start playing it and I'm having trouble, since you're generally more into these kinds of games than I am, or better at them anyway, I have trouble, you have a really strong guy, I can summon your guy, use some play coins, and there you go. So it's a
this game sounds really good.
I know, it's a highly integrated social component, and it makes sense, and it doesn't break the game, and you don't need to be street passing people left and right in Chicago like I always am to utilize it. Like, you don't need to, I know you street pass fewer people in Minnesota generally, but you don't need to, because it just will pace the game differently. It's like, I can't clear this boulder in an hour, I have to wait 10 hours instead. So, I mean, who cares? Oh, well, you'll just wait till morning, and then it's cleared, because no one's playing for 10 hours straight. But then for those people who are very highly active on Street Pass in big areas like me, I'll have my village constructed very quickly. But again, it's not going to break the game because of the item restrictions. So it's super fun. I think it's challenging. There is one optional boss once you've beaten the demo that will give you additional in-game items. And I died when I tried to beat him. He was very hard. So I'm actually grinding a little bit. testing out the grinding system, seeing how quickly it goes. I have read a couple reviews that say the full game, the storyline's a bit generic. It doesn't, it's not the best writing ever or whatever. I don't know. But in terms of the combat and the item system and the equipment system and all that, it was a minor bit of adjustment, but once I got used to it, like John, you would love this. I just have a feeling this is your bag. I feel like it'd be your jam.
It sounds really good.
Yeah, so I just think it's especially since you just were playing Final Fantasy V. The inputting everyone's command at the start of the battle reminds me of Final Fantasy III, because that's the most recent old school Final Fantasy game I've played, and that's how that input works. But the shop system is totally somewhere between Final Fantasy V and Final Fantasy Tactics. So it's cool, dude. It's cool.
I think that's going to be kind of the next. Once I kind of fall off Diablo 3 again, which eventually I will. I think I'm gonna pick this up. I really do, because it totally sounds like my style of game.
I know, yeah. And honest to God, I have gotten home before and sat on my couch playing it and not playing Final Fantasy Lightning Returns because I like the game so much.
And it's the demo that you're playing.
It is the demo, yeah. So not even all the full features are unlocked. So I don't even have voice acting, and apparently there's voice acting. So. Okay, and the music is amazing.
I bet it is.
So I searched on YouTube for Bravely Default battle music. I'm pretty sure I posted a link to this YouTube video on our Google Plus page, but it is the battle music. There's a video of a live concert from Japan that's 17 minutes long, and it's a battle medley of the main theme, of the main battle theme, and then the boss battle music, and then a couple other boss battle themes that I haven't gotten to. They're not in the demo. But the first, 5 minutes, it goes right into it, and it is a rock band with a full orchestra and, brass section. So there's, electric guitar and strings and trumpets, and it is, I believe, they used a live orchestra to record the soundtrack for the game, if I'm not mistaken.
Which is pretty impressive, if that's true.
Dude, it is so good. The battle music is... I watch that video 3 times a day at work because the music is always stuck in my head. The battle music is so good. The overworld music is so... all of the music is so good. And that also reminds me of Final Fantasy old school because... Obviously, Nobuo Uematsu is one of the best composers ever for video game music. So,
that's true.
Yeah, man, the music is good and it's gorgeous. They have hand-painted sceneries for some of these towns. The 3D effect works more in depth than any 3D game I've played. It works better than Link Between Worlds and all the Street Pass games that I play. I can't really explain how, but it just seems to have more level of dimension. So I don't know how to really describe it, but the 3D just looks better. The visual style is great. They're super deformed characters. Everything about this game I like so far. Everything.
Great.
So yeah, that's why. Yeah, and of course, yeah. I mean, every time something is kind of hits me as, oh, this is awesome. I'm just like, dude, John is gonna love this game. Oh, you're gonna love it. So I can't wait. I'm excited for you to start playing it and play the demo. That's the best. That's the other. I mean, that's really the really really cool thing about it too. You don't even have to spend a dime. You can be sitting in your room, download the demo because that's the day and age we're in, and get 5 hours out of it. And then if I'm missing the mark and you don't like it, whatever. But I think you will like it. But then you just played 5 hours of a video game for free, and it was really fun.
And it'll then translate stuff to the actual version of the game.
Yeah, so it's not just spinning your wheels. So I highly recommend it. Listener, if you like JRPGs, definitely get the demo. And I'm sure I will follow up when I get the full game. It's been tough. I've had a hard time convincing myself that it's okay to buy the game because I still have not beaten Pokemon Y. I'm 60 hours into it. And I don't like jumping back and forth between games on the same system since I'm already jumping back and forth between them and Lightning Returns. But I think I like the game enough to where I may actually just pick it up anyway and just switch between the two.
To be fair, Pokemon Y is not the kind of game that I feel like you need to feel guilty about leaving for a while and coming back to. There's no story there, right? That you're losing. I mean, it's so easy to just pick that back up again if you want.
Well, the story is I want to be the very best, John.
Like no one ever was?
Like no one ever was, you know? I mean, like if you think about it, to catch them is your real test in that game, and to train them is your cause, essentially, right?
Pokemon.
Yeah. So there's that. But yeah, so I'm also still playing Pokemon Y. I think I have 6 gym badges, and that leads us to the last thing I want to talk about on this podcast. How closely were you able to follow Twitch Plays Pokemon?
I watched it 4 or 5 times for anywhere from 10 minutes to 30 minutes at a time on any of those times. So I probably spent like 3 or 4 hours with it total.
Okay. Did you check out the subreddit?
No, because I don't really know how to use Reddit. Like, is that a weird thing to say? Reddit is intimidating to me. I have not taken the time to like figure it out, but Reddit is confusing to me.
Sure. Okay. So the subreddit is where all the memes came out and were generated, and websites and t-shirt sales, and just the whole like kind of subculture that evolved from Twitch Plays Pokemon, as far as I know, kind of lived on Reddit. And I'm sure you saw me on Facebook just exploding all week.
Oh, there was some of the craziest stuff. The best was there was an article on Kotaku, and I don't know why it always gets stuff always gets on so much on that website, but it was an article that explained all of like the religions that came out of Twitch Plays Pokemon.
Yeah,
it was the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Okay, so you've been following it on Kotaku then, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been following it as a phenomenon.
Yeah, I think I've been going straight. So yeah, Kotaku did a really good job summarizing a lot of it. I would highly recommend, John, following Twitch Plays Pokemon on Facebook, because somebody's running a fan page and they're posting a lot of that stuff kind of more in real time. So in case you don't see it as much on Kotaku, like, it's fun to see that stuff in your news feed. But all of it comes from the subreddit. I think that's kind of where the home is. And I read it religiously, so I see like every stupid meme that comes up and stuff. And it's wild. I don't want to go super into it now because I actually guest starred on one of Jamie Butterworth's YouTube videos on Saturday. So talking about Twitch Plays Pokemon, he sent me an invite. He said, "Hey, anybody want to talk about Twitch Plays Pokemon?" And I was like, "Hell yeah!" So go check out Jamie's channel on Google Plus. He's Jamie Butterworth, but you can also find him on YouTube as Butterworthy is his channel. I don't know if he has the URL officially, but I think if you search Butterworthy, you should be able to find it, or search for Butterworthy Twitch Plays Pokemon. And yeah, I guess hosted in. We talked a lot about it and the whole like everything behind it.
Overall, you thought it was a pretty incredible thing, though, right?
I'm still following it. Now they're doing Pokemon Gold.
I think they're on Crystal.
Are they?
Yeah.
I don't really know what comes after Red and Blue, so I don't really...
Well, X and Y does at some point.
Yeah. It eventually gets to X and Y. But I will say I have been obsessed to a degree with Twitch Plays Pokemon. I think it's just hilarious and ridiculous and just unbelievable. So
I agree with you. It is definitely all of those things.
All of those things. So yeah. So hey, and also I posted the Castlevania Symphony of the Night memes. Did you see those?
I did. They're really good. They're really good. They're excellent memes. You did a very good job with them.
I appreciate it. So listener, go to unqualifiedgamers.com if you want. I photoshopped somewhat poorly, but I photoshopped some memes of Castlevania Symphony of the Night because I was bored and really felt like it, and they're kind of funny, and feel free to use them places, because that's what the internet is memes and cats. Often both.
There's really not much else on there.
On where? The website or on the internet?
On the internet.
That's true. Or really on our website. I'm working on getting more content for it, but, life happens sometimes.
Boy, you tell me about life happening.
Yeah. Oh, I'm trying to... That was my impression of you. Did you like
It
it?
sounds exactly like me. You nailed it.
Thank you. What are you drinking right now? Whiskey? Is that whiskey?
No, alcohol's been... Not that it hasn't been appealing to me, but it's been kind of off of the radar at the moment.
Oh,
but,
okay. All right.
But if I had whiskey here, I would be drinking it.
Okay. I figured it might be whiskey in a jar. Rah.
I don't know what that reference is, and I don't care to know.
I made that reference like 3 episodes ago, and you said the same thing, and I told you it's metalingus.
That still doesn't help me. What's a metalingus?
It's your attitude.
WWE attitude?
Thank you for that. Whiskey. It sounded like you were drinking whiskey. That's why I asked. Last week, one more thing. Last week, Ryan, he was texting me saying, oh, yeah, I'll do your podcast. And I texted him and said, yeah, I want Drunk Ryan in all caps because I yell things for no reason. You know this about me.
Yeah.
And when we finished the podcast, a couple hours later, after I posted the podcast a couple days later, or the next day, or whenever the hell it was, after I posted it, he said, yeah, I was getting really drunk near the end. And I was like, oh my God, are you serious? You were drinking while we recorded? And he goes, you told me to. And I totally was kidding. So he got drunk and I didn't know it while we were recording.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so that happened.
Well done. Well done.
Thank
so
you.
You wrought that upon yourself, is what you're saying.
Pretty much. I'll still blame it on you, but yeah, I did.
Good job.
I really did. Thank you. So, congratulations. Happy birthday to me. And go to unqualifiedgamers.com so you can find us on the internet.
Not your birthday.
It's not your birthday.
It's not my birthday. It's also not yours.